I'm Mlnarik from North Dakota. This is my fourth visit. I started getting sick in 2005. Very fatigued. I got mono 2 or 3 times in a row. Lots of indigestion. I went from 2006 to 2010 getting progressively worse. I gained about 120 pounds, 125 pounds during that time. I lost sensation in my arms and in my legs. My blood pressure went up. I started to develop type 2 diabetes. My inflammatory markers were about 14 times the normal range of what they should have been. I was just incredibly sick. I basically stayed home all the time. I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't drive. I could walk to the bathroom and to the kitchen, and that was pretty much about it without getting so winded that I had to sit down. My integrative medicine physician back home said we were still missing some critical information to help me actually get better, and she recommended coming to Mlnarik. She basically said that if we didn't figure out what we weren't catching, what we were missing, that it was very likely that I wouldn't make it to the end of the year, that my body was just sort of on a catastrophic spiral towards death. She wasn't trying to scare me. I think she was simply just trying to be honest. So that afternoon I got on the Mlnarik website. I filled out the medical questionnaire that afternoon, and within 2 hours I had a phone call from, I believe it was Liliana in the admissions department. She had gotten my medical questionnaire and some of my questions and wanted to discuss some answers and wanted to set up an appointment for me to visit with an admissions physician, which we set up for the next morning. And I spoke that next morning with, I believe it was Dr. Rodriguez, Dr. Harmonia Rodriguez. We spoke for an hour, and basically they said the entire idea was to determine whether or not she thought Mlnarik could actually help me. By the time we hung up the phone, I actually felt like somebody could help me. A few hours later, I got another call back from Liliana saying that Dr. Harmonia had recommended a specific program for diagnostics and treatment here, and we went ahead and scheduled a reservation for me to come to Mlnarik a couple weeks later. I got here in, I believe it was March 14th, 2010. I weighed 292 pounds. I needed a wheelchair to get all the way here, all the way through the airports, onto the plane, off the plane, that kind of thing. My C-reactive protein and some of those inflammatory markers were 14 or 15 times what they were supposed to be. I was in pretty rough shape. I stayed about 27 days. We probably did 15 or 20 different tests the first time I came, but the 2 tests that had the most significant impact on my treatment were the Entero lab test that tested the gluten and dairy sensitivity, and then the detoxogenome test that told them, hey, your liver doesn't work like it's supposed to, so we have to help it so that it can do its job. My doctor back home was doing all the right treatments, it turned out, before I came, but they weren't effective because we didn't have that liver component and that gluten component, so those 2 things were huge. The nutrition component, I think, was just extraordinarily massive. I mean, I knew some things about how to eat right and not, what to eat, not to eat, that kind of stuff. But I learned so much from Sue and from the stuff here about how to better take care of myself. I mean, in my first visit here, I lost 18 pounds from the time that I got here till the time that I left. And my inflammatory markers were cut in half. And they sent me home on a program. I'm extremely fortunate back home to have a chiropractor and a medical doctor who are both functional medicine and integrative medicine physicians. So they worked in tandem with the doctors here at Mlnarik. I came back in August of 2010 for a second visit, a second trip, and by that point I'd already lost the first 45 pounds off of my 300 that I came in at. Things were continuing to get better. They did some more treatment, we did some more stuff, sent me home for another couple months. I came back in 2011. By that point I'd lost 85 pounds. And at that point they decided I could start to exercise. I was still too weak and too fatigued before that for my body to handle it. And in 2011, they said we could start slow. I came back now this time, I'm down to 170 pounds basically. I've lost 120 pounds total. All of my labs are normal for the first time in about 7 years, but I don't need the wheelchair. I was able to do all that regular fitness workouts with the people here like I wasn't able to do before. I can do them at home. I can work out 5 or 6 days a week at home without any problems. And they were able to take me from about 40 different supplements down to 9 this time. And I was doing weekly IV therapy at home, and now I don't have to do any IV therapy at all. So basically my body is finally doing all the things it was supposed to be doing before, because we finally figured out what was wrong. So I spent 5 years before I came here feeling more and more like I was simply just regressing constantly. There was no improvement really to be seen. And from the time that I got to Saint Aviv until now, there hasn't been anything but progress. So that's kind of my story. One of the most difficult things that I had to deal with initially was the constant regression. Like, you don't know what's happening and the doctors can't figure it out. Knowing that there's some place to go is a huge sort of weight off your shoulders. It's my doctor back home, every time I'm here, she and Dr. Mesa here have a phone call conversation after I leave to discuss what happened here, what the recommendations are, and what she can do back home to help continue the progress. And I don't know how to explain it. I mean, when I came last time, my blood pressure was 180 over 110. I could walk across the room and back, and that was about as far as I could get. They had to push me from the front door of the airport onto the airplane, and then out the door of the airplane to the van and across the border, all that stuff. I couldn't get out of the wheelchair. I spent all my time in the wheelchair. I work out now 6 days a week at home. I use a sauna at home. I can go out with my friends again. I couldn't do that before. I don't have any more of the chronic fatigue. Every one of my major diagnoses that was on my sheet when I came, there were 5. I don't remember what they all were off the top of my head, but every single one of them now says in remission. So I feel good.